Hello and welcome to Naomi's Bookshelf for the books outside of my comfort zone. So I have a stack of 10 books here that definitely fit outside of my comfort zone. I do have a prompt for my TBR game of Clue that is outside of my comfort zone, and for that I will be picking from these books based on the month and how I'm feeling. But I will be showing you 10 books that I own that I feel very nervous about picking out, and I think you can notice a trend for some of them. So let's get into the list of 10. So the first one is one that I was given and told that I would really enjoy, even though it's really not my thing, and that is Dragonfly by Anne McCraffy, or McCraffy. This one is a high fantasy dragon book, which I know for some people that sounds amazing, but for me, I don't read a lot of fantasy, so this one is not one I am drawn towards. And I would like to have it read so I can at least talk to the person who gave it to me and tell them how I felt about it at the very least. It's classic science fiction, it says. So this is a classic, and it is also written by a woman, which is very interesting to me, as I know a lot of classic science fiction is written by men. So that is one that is out of my comfort zone, but I do own because I think it deserves a shot. The next one is one that is a bit different for me. That's horror, which is Classic Tales of Horror by Edgar Allan Poe. I don't read any horror. I love mysteries, I love thrillers, but I don't read horror. I love true crime, but I don't read horror. And so this is very outside my comfort zone. So I have here Edgar Allan Poe, which I feel like is horror, but at the same time, it's not going to be the super scary stuff that would be daunting to jump into. So at the very least, I could have an easy start into horror and get started, because I would like to try that genre, as I feel like I might enjoy it. It's just daunting, and because when you think of horror, you think of Stephen King, and Stephen King, when you think of Stephen King, you think of It, or The Stand, or Under the Dome, or things like that, and I'm just like, I'm nowhere near comfortable with those things. So if I start low, I can work my way up to Stephen King and maybe start lower on Stephen King than the big ones. But that's a horror that I own because maybe I can start on this one. In a similar vein to that, I think this one is horror as well, but I don't know if it's more horror or ghost story-esque, which I don't read a lot of either because I'm not comfortable picking them up all the time. It's not my go-to. And that's The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This is the inspiration behind The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, which I really enjoyed. But I wanted to read the source material as well, and it's really short. And I think with this one, it's going to be definitely a supernatural element too, because it's such a classic. You can't be like, oh, is it just a smart house again? So yeah, I'm kind of daunted by this. It is really short, so I'm hoping I can read this one and fall in love with it. But at the same time, it's scary because it's supposed to be eerie and spooky and ghosty. So this is outside my comfort zone. Something else that is typically outside my comfort zone is poetry. So I have a poetry collection here of Emily Dickinson. This is something that I would like to get more into, but I just don't find myself grabbing. So here is a small collection of her work, and I would like to read it eventually, but it is not something I gravitate towards. So the next one is one that is so far out of my comfort zone, but I know I need to put it on a list like this in order to read it. And that is Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. I don't read anything like this ever. This I tried to read before, and I think I got 10 pages in and I was like, I can't imagine Colonel Brandon with an octopus face. I can't. But I do own it still. I do want to try reading it. I want to give it a good, fair shot at this book because I do think that it could be a fun twist on a classic, and it has potential to be really great. I just need to get over my own insecurities and my own struggles with this genre of science fiction or biology aspect of science fiction and work with that. So that's on this list. So a book from the same series is Android Karenina, because I also don't read any cyborg stuff. I do not read science fiction or I do not read horror typically. Those are my two big genres I do not read a lot of, but I do want to get more into them. And so this one is that science fiction where it's cyborgs, and android Karenina is based on Anna Karenina, and I think Anna Karenina is a cyborg, I think. I don't know anything else about it. It is big, but Anna Karenina is huge, so I enjoyed that one. I would hopefully enjoy this one too. I think I'm scared because I don't read cyborgs, so it's on the list. Another one is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I feel like this one I don't reach for because it's urban fantasy, if that sounds right. When I read fantasy, I read like high fantasy. And I know I put this on here because it's a fantasy, but I don't read a lot of fantasy in general. So when I read, or is that science fiction? Yeah, it's science fiction, not even fantasy. Anyways, this one, I don't read a lot of urban fantasy. I like to have my worlds very separate. I don't like having a mixing of the two. And so this one is a mixing of the two. And I don't remember how far in I got. I have to reread this whole thing. But I got to a part where they were definitely melding magic and our world. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And so I think I put it down for other reasons, and then I never got back to it. So this is on the list. Another book that might be a shock is Twilight by Stephanie Myers. I do not read vampires either. I like to be rooted in the real world a lot. And so vampires are not real world. Sorry to burst anyone's bubble. And this one in particular, I don't really like angsty teenager books. And that's all I've heard about this one. So this one feels really outside my bubble, outside my comfort zone. And I think people have told me that so I don't have a solid opinion on this. I will never have an opinion until I've read Twilight. People have told me that it is like garbage, but you can't stop reading. So I do want to give it a try, but I don't know how soon. So that's why it's now on this list of out of my comfort zone books. Another book is another science fiction one. I plan to read more science fiction books this year. That's why they're on this list, and that's why I'm prioritizing them in a way. And that is Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne. I found this one, saw it, and almost didn't buy it. But at the same time, I need to read more science fiction, and I would like to try reading more classic science fiction, as I do enjoy reading classics, and maybe that's the way to go for me. I did enjoy Frankenstein, which is classic sci-fi. So maybe, I don't know anything about this one. I watched the movie of Journey to the Center of the Earth with Josh Hutcherson, but that's not the book. So, yeah, and this one also was written in 1864. So science was very different back then. Anyways, I am excited to pick this one up when I can. But I'm not a science fiction giant lover, so yeah. It is really short though, so I almost picked it for my January TBR, but I went with poetry instead. So this one is a high contender for my next out of comfort zone prompt pick. And so the last book on this list is In the Company of Sherlock Holmes, stories inspired by the Holmes canon. And this is edited by Laurie R. King and Leslie S. Klinger. This, I do not read a lot of short story collections. I find that I don't engage with them very well, and it's very hard for me to really connect with short stories in general. So I do buy very few short story collections, but when I do, I want to read them. And this one sounds really interesting to me as it's about Sherlock Holmes, or inspired by Sherlock Holmes. So this is something that I would like to get to because of that. It is outside my comfort zone. I will never reach for it first. That's why it's on this list. So that's a book that I would like to get to, and it is something that there are like 15 authors and it's short, so that's not a compliment from me. That's, for some people that'd be great, but for me, I need like novellas instead of short stories. So I'm hoping that this one is better than I expect. So that is it for the books that are out of my comfort zone for this year. All 10 of them I hope to have read by the end of the year. Maybe not, but at the very least, I'd like to try to get through some of them and expand my horizons into horror and science fiction at the very least, because that's what this predominantly is. So please let me know down below, what are your out of comfort zone genres or books that you would like to try this year. Please also subscribe if you'd like to, and like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time with another video. Bye for now.